This evening we're going to look at the purpose of life, and we're going to be going back and forth between two books, from Acts chapter 17 and then to the book of Ecclesiastes. Not necessarily, in that order. We'll do it in that order. But we're going to be going back and forth between the two. So let's go ahead and start in Acts chapter 17, and we're going to speak on basically three ideas, basic ideas. And this has to do with the purpose of life and why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing while we're here? What is the best way to live? And everybody has a philosophy they live by. Everybody, even those who cannot possibly enunciate it. Everybody lives by a philosophy, one way or another. Whether it's right or wrong, everybody has one. Now, we'll start with Acts chapter 17, and we'll just begin in verse 16. Now, while Paul waited for them at Athens, he's at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him when he saw that the city was given over to idols. It was just full of idols. Now, Paul, we'll just make mention, right? Until we, before going any further, Paul's been to a lot of cities. He was not raised in Jerusalem where there wouldn't be any idols. He was raised in Tarsus. That's a Gentile city. So he's accustomed to things like this. But Athens, they raised the volume on it. That there are shrines and temples and idols all over the place. And he sees the city is given over to idolatry. Verse 17, therefore he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and with the Gentile worshipers and in the marketplace daily with those who happen to be there. Now, in going to the synagogue of the Jews and with the Gentiles who happen to be there, he's not having to address idolatry as being their problem, because the Jews wouldn't be worshiping Athena or Zeus or anyone like that. They would try to follow the Old Testament prophets, and that's what they would try to do. And with the Gentile worshipers who were there, obviously they had left all the darkness, all the ignorance and all of paganism, and they saw the Word of God for what it is, as being valuable, as being the Word of God. It is from Him. But he goes into the marketplace and he speaks to those who are there. Now with there, you'd be meeting with your average Athenian, who would be just your basic religious person, but it would be the religions of Athens, worshiping and sacrificing to these various idols that are there. Now, verse 18, then certain Epicurean and Stoic philosophers encountered him, and some said, what does this babbler want to say? Others said, he seems to be a proclaimer of foreign gods, because he preached to them Jesus and the resurrection. So here we have these two schools of thought that were prevalent in Athens, and they were prevalent. And I'm just going to make mention of this. Luke, who writes the book of Acts, knew the first century world, the first century Roman world. He knew it. And it comes as no surprise to anyone who knows Athens, and Athens in the first century, that was two schools of philosophy that were there. And they were prominent schools of philosophy that happened to be in Athens. It's not something that's just fiction, or something that he just happened to get right, but it is right. This is right. Now, let's talk about these two schools for a bit. Now we're going to go back to Ecclesiastes, or just go to Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Ecclesiastes 2, and we'll just begin in verse 1. Now, before we begin, this is written by Solomon, and it is Solomon's search for his own purpose in life. What is he going to do? That he is an extremely powerful an extremely wealthy man. He is king. And as one may say, the world is his oyster. And truly it was. And so what are you going to do with the years that you have in this life? What are you going to do with it? And it is his personal search in it. And he could do whatever it is that he wanted to do. Being king, and even prior to that, being a prince, he could pretty much do whatever one would think. He could do whatever it is that he wanted to do. But let's just begin in chapter 2, verse 1. I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure, but surely this also was vanity. I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth, what does it accomplish? So in this, it's going after pleasure. That's what it is. But he comes to this, he's not against laughter, but if that's all there is, if there's nothing beyond that, it is madness. And if there's nothing beyond that, then there's not much of a purpose there. If it's just being entertained, if it's just enjoying yourself regardless of what's going on, that this is madness. And of mirth, what does it accomplish? Where did it get you? No, it really didn't get you anywhere. I mean, there's nothing wrong with mirth. There's nothing wrong with laughter. But he's just asking a question, is this all we're about? Is this it? Is there nothing more than this? Because that's shallow. Verse 3, I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their lives. Now what I just read, Ecclesiastes 2, 1 through 3, describes the Epicureans. That is their philosophy. Now understand that the philosophies of old can be seen in philosophies that remain to this day, maybe by another name, maybe having no name whatsoever. Humanism would be part of this. Humanism is a bit more complicated, I suppose, but for that of being an Epicurean, basically whatever makes me happy is good. That's what it comes down to. Whatever. And the Epicureans would have known, just like anybody else, that this life ends in death. It ends at the grave. So what are you going to do between now and the grave? Well, their idea is, I'm going to gratify whatever I want. I'm going to party. I'm going to do whatever makes me happy. That's what I'm going to pursue, and that is the greatest purpose I can have in my life, aside from the fact that it would be hard to do such a thing and not feel a tad on the selfish side, because that's exactly what it is. It is selfish. It is self-centered. And even humanists have to agree that someone who sacrifices their life for someone else, to protect someone else, is good. Even by their own philosophy, it can't be good. But even they have to say, yeah, that's selfless. That was a good act, even though they died by doing it. That was a good act. Now with the Epicureans started with the philosopher Epicurus. It's named after him. He was born about 341 BC, and he was obviously he is Greek, but where does that lead? Where does all of it lead? Nothing but self-indulgence. That is the entire scope of it. It's no deeper than that. It's just self-indulgent. Now, I remember having this conversation years ago. And when you're dealing with young people haven't been faced with a whole lot of deep thought. Let's just face it. All right, it's the rare one that actually has thought about a few things. Typically, they just haven't taken the time, or they're just not mature enough, and they haven't really thought much about it. But I was talking to a young man who really his whole interest was centered around being entertained. And that was it. Just being entertained. How am I entertained right now? And anything that happened to be a burden, anything that would, and he would be like the fair-weathered friend, if as long as everything was going well with this group of friends, oh, he's there. But once there's something going on with one or more of them, and it's not so fun anymore, well, he's gone. All right, he's just chasing the fun, is what he's doing. He's chasing the sun, we could say, as that fair-weathered friend. That's what he was. And I had a conversation with him of that if that's all you are, that is, all you are is just looking for entertainment. That's it. That's the only reason you exist, is to be entertained. That seems empty. You might as well have just come into existence as bones in a grave. You might as well just popped into existence like that, because there's no purpose. There's nothing really beneficial from your existence. Just that someone's there to entertain you, and that's it. All right, that's empty. Surely there's more to life than that. Well, at that point in time, and I didn't see him much after that, but after that, from that point in time, surely he came to a different conclusion. But if that is what you're living for, that's very empty. There's not much there. Now let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 6. Go to chapter 6, and we will begin with verse 1. Ecclesiastes 6, verse 1. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and is common. It is common among men. A man to whom God has given riches and wealth and honor, so that he lacks nothing for himself of all he desires, yet God does not give him power to eat of it, but a foreigner consumes it. This is vanity, and it is an evil affliction. So what's he saying? He's saying you have a man that has pretty much everything he needs, but it's taken away from him by somebody else. It's taken away by an invader, or someone has done this. Verse 3, if a man begets 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with goodness, or indeed he has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better than he. For it comes, this would be the stillborn child, for it comes in vanity and departs in darkness, and its name is covered with darkness. Though it has not seen the sun nor known anything, this has more rest than that man. All right, so someone who is stillborn is of more blessed, you might say, than the man who has seen such troubles. Verse 6, which is precisely what Job said. Even if he lives 1,000 years twice, but has not seen goodness, do not all go to one place. Yeah, that's right. It's the grave. King, pauper, wise, fool, rich, poor, big, small, renowned, unknown, everyone ends up in the grave. All the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet the soul is not satisfied. This is it's coming to the reality of life. The reality that things may not go the way you think they ought to go. Now we come down to verse 12. For who knows what is good for man in life? All the days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow. Who can tell a man what will happen after him under the sun? Well, here is this whole idea. This idea that there is no point. There is nothing but death. And is not everything that occurs from existing to death, from birth to death, just vanity? Is there anything of any use in between these 2 points? Now, we talk about the Epicureans. I'm sorry, we've already done that. We talk about the Stoics. Stoics, going back to Acts chapter 17, with the Stoics. The Stoic philosophy begins with a man by the name of Zeno. He is from 335 BC. And the Stoics, some have said, the Stoics actually were previously Epicureans that sobered up. That they came to a point in their life, they matured, and now they have become Stoics. But it's still an empty philosophy. It comes to a dead end, an absolute solid dead end. And that is, we are going to face whatever occurs in this life. And there's some bad things that occur in this life. We're going to face it with tranquility of mind. Now, this to me sounds precisely like Buddhism, is what it sounds like. But this is tranquility of mind and also understanding moral worth, which gets kind of hazy with the Stoics on that one. What exactly do they mean by that? And did they really understand what moral worth was? But here you have this tranquility of mind, going through the blasts of life, the storms that come around, and we're just going to face it, as we would say, stoically. That is, of just facing the blast with all nobility, with all our strength, and we just take it for what it is and keep plugging on. All right, well, that's all right, but this too is pointless. This too is absolutely ineffective and comes to the same place of the grave. Comes to the same place. We can talk about something like the Titanic or some other shipwreck, of where you can have all these different people on board, and all of them having different philosophies, all from different stages of life, all having their own things that they desire doing, and all of them are going down into the cold water. All of them. All of them are going down into it. Well, that's the way life is. That's the way life is, and there would be no hope whatsoever in this. Now, we go back to Acts chapter 17. Acts 17, and Paul says this concerning the Athenians and concerning the Stoics and the Epicureans, because he's talking to them directly. They're the ones that invited him up to Mars Hill, or the Areopagus. They're the ones that invited him to speak, and he ends by saying this in verse 30, "Truly these times of ignorance God overlooked, but now commands all men everywhere to repent." That's what he tells them they must do. That Stoicism gets you nowhere. Epicureanism gets you nowhere. That's a way of looking at life, but it's all flawed, and there's no real purpose to it. Just like with the Epicureans, here comes pain, and so I'm going to try to avoid it as best I can. With the Stoics, here comes pain, and I'm going to try to face it head on as best I can. There's still pain. There's still pain in both of them. Here comes death, I'm going to party until I can't breathe anymore. Here comes death, and I'm going to face it until I don't breathe anymore. Well, there's still death in this. And they both go to the grave, just like Solomon said in all this. They go to the same place. Now, here is this word of hope coming by way of this babbler. "Truly these times of ignorance God overlooked, but now commands all men everywhere to repent, because He has appointed a day on which He will judge the world in righteousness by the man whom He has ordained. He has given assurance of this to all by raising Him from the dead." Now, when some heard that, that was the end of it. That the thought of being raised from the dead was beyond what they're willing to listen to. All right, they're going to stop it at that point. But what he's given them is hope. And it's not the hope that Zeno could give you. It's not the hope that Epicurus could give you, because they couldn't give you any kind of hope whatsoever. Here is something better. And neither one of them could give salvation. Neither one could actually give any kind of morality. They can't do that. They can't. That can only come from God. Now let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Ecclesiastes 2, beginning in verse 10. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. For my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled. And indeed, all was vanity and grasping for wind. There was no profit under the sun. That no matter what he did, Solomon found that it was nothing. That's what vanity means. Vanity just means a nothingness. There's no meaning behind it. There's nothing that's lasting behind it. There's nothing of any permanent use behind it. And in some things, there's no use really at all. Just something that happens to be done. That's it. And he comes to a conclusion. And we go to Ecclesiastes chapter 12. He comes to a conclusion in all this, in all the writing and all the living and the years in his life given over to this. He comes to a conclusion. Verse 13, Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. What's the whole matter? Your life and the life of all humanity. The reason for humanity. That's a big matter. And he has now a conclusion in it. What should we be doing all the years of our life? He says, fear God and keep His commandments, for this is man's all. This is the reason we are here. This is the reason why we exist. We exist to follow God and serve Him. That's why we are here. Not here to, like the one fellow I talked about just a few minutes ago, not here just to be entertained. We're not here just to seek whatever fun and leisure and amusement we can find for the day. It is for a greater purpose than that. And that is to serve God, to keep His commandments, and that is going to our very soul. No one can be more satisfied, more contented, more at peace than doing the will of God. Because that fits directly with your design and my design of our soul. We are hardwired to worship. We are also wired to serve. All that can be killed. We have it in ourselves that we want to worship and serve something. And there is no greater peace, no greater joy, no greater of any kind of emotion than serving God and having done everything that you can. Why was it that, how even was it that the apostles actually had joy in persecution? Because they knew they were serving God. Even while being persecuted. They didn't like that so much, but they knew they were serving God. They knew it. Now we go back to Acts chapter 17, and we just look at verse 27 because Paul is addressing what everyone must be doing. Acts chapter 17, and this would include everyone in Athens. Acts chapter 17, verse 27, so that they, that's all mankind, should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope for Him and find Him, though He is not far from each one of us. For in Him we live and move and have our being, as also some of your own poets have said, for we are also His offspring. This is our purpose. Seeking God in the hopes of finding Him. And of course, in finding Him, and Paul says He's not very far from any one of us. And he's talking to Athenians, he's talking to pagans, he's talking to these philosophers of different stripes. He's talking to them, and God is not far from them. No, He's not. He's not far from anyone on this earth. For those who try to seek Him, He can be found, and that has been assured to us by His Son. He can be found. Now, in finding Him, let's serve Him. Let's serve Him with everything we can, because that's precisely what we are called to do. That is man's all. Our reason for existing is there. We're not here by way of accident, some sort of cosmic randomness that occurred, which is preposterously impossible. We are not here by just by mere cause and effect. We are here because God has created all of us, and He expects us to fully take the purpose in which for our existence. Take that seriously. We're not here to serve ourselves. We're here to serve Him. We're not here for our own self-indulgence or self-interest or making ourselves great. It is magnifying Him. And magnifying Him by way not just of words, but by way of action. Our lives will be judged. Every action we take will be judged. Everything we do will be recorded and brought back, whether it is good or whether it is evil. And as we have read from Acts chapter 17, as we have read from there, God has selected the judge, and He has shown this selection by raising Him from the dead. That's the very one who's going to judge us. The one who walked out of that tomb is the one, and ascended into heaven, is the one that's going to come back and judge all mankind, first to last. Every action. And it will be a day in which everything that we see now will be gone. Nothing left of it. And what remains of this realm is the human soul, being cast away into hell or brought home to heaven. We ask this evening, if you need to respond to the invitation, if we can help you, we ask that you come as we stand and sing.